3 months ago, I lived in a 5.2 million house in Austin with my wife and 2 kids. Today, I'm standing on the side of the road with nothing but a suitcase, watching my children shiver under a streetlight because my own father decided I was too poor to be part of his family legacy. My name is Frank Dawson. I'm 42 years old, and until recently, I thought I understood what family meant. For the last decade, my entire life revolved around one thing: caring for my sick mother. While my brothers chased promotions in high-rise offices and my sisters posed on beaches for Instagram, I was the one sitting beside her hospital bed, spoon-feeding her soup, and holding her trembling hands when the pain medicine didn't work. I gave up promotions, I gave up vacations, I gave up sleep, because she was my mother and she needed me. I thought my father noticed. I thought deep down he respected it. But I was wrong. The night of the funeral, while the smell of roses and incense still lingered in the air, he called us all into the living room of our mansion. The chandeliers glittered above us, casting light on the polished marble floor. My brothers were laughing, their wives clinking glasses of champagne. My sisters dressed in designer black dresses, whispering smugly to each other. My wife held my daughter close, and my son leaned against me, sensing the tension. My father adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and spoke with a voice that cut through the room like ice. "From this day forward," he said, "everything I own, the businesses, the land, the accounts, the house, will belong to your brothers and sisters. They are the future of this family." The words hit me like a fist. My ears rang. My throat went dry. I blinked at him, waiting for him to continue, waiting for him to say my name. But he didn't. I asked the only question that mattered. "What about me?" He didn't hesitate. His eyes locked onto mine, colder than I'd ever seen. You wasted your life. You stayed behind. You took care of your mother like a servant, but you built nothing. You're weak, Frank. You are poor. You deserve nothing." The room erupted in laughter. My brothers leaned back in their chairs, grinning like they'd won a lottery. Their wives whispered to each other, eyes flicking over my worn suit. My sisters avoided my gaze, pretending not to notice my humiliation. My wife squeezed my hand under the table, her face pale with shock, while my son's eyes filled with tears. Then my father did something I will never forget. He ordered the guards to throw me, my wife, and my children out of the house. That same house where I had spent sleepless nights taking care of my dying mother. We begged him to reconsider. I reminded him of the years I had sacrificed, the jobs I had turned down, the nights I had spent keeping her alive. But he didn't care. To him, loyalty wasn't wealth. Sacrifice wasn't power, and in his world I was worthless. The guards pushed us out onto the driveway. The gates slammed shut behind us as my siblings gathered on the balcony, champagne in hand, watching like spectators at a show. Their laughter followed us into the cold night air. My daughter cried. My son clung to my arm. My wife held them both, whispering comfort she didn't believe herself. And I stood there, staring up at the glowing windows of the mansion, rage and shame twisting inside me. That night, under the dark Texas sky, I swore a promise. If my father believed I was poor, if my siblings thought I was finished, then I would prove them all wrong. I would rise from nothing, and when the time came, they would regret the day they turned their backs on me. But I didn't know then. The storm that was about to come would test every part of me. Frank and his family stand outside the mansion, stripped of everything with nowhere to go, unaware that hidden in his late mother's belongings is a secret that could change everything. The first night after being thrown out of the mansion was the longest of my life. My wife, Elena, tried to stay strong for the kids, but I could see the fear in her eyes as she wrapped her arms, Around them, under a thin blanket, we sat at a bus stop on the edge of the city, the cold concrete biting through our clothes. Every passing car felt like a spotlight on our shame. Every laugh from a bar down the street like an echo of my siblings' voices mocking me. By morning, we had nowhere to go. No money, no roof, just the clothes on our backs and a small duffel bag Elena had managed to grab before the guards shoved us out. I had never felt so powerless in my life. We checked into a cheap roadside motel, the kind with flickering neon signs and a front desk clerk who looked at you like you didn't belong. I paid for one night with the last of the cash in my wallet. The room smelled of mildew, the carpet was stained, and the mattress springs groaned with every move. My kids didn't complain. They were too exhausted. My daughter curled up next to her mother, and my son asked me quietly if Grandpa really hated us. I didn't know how to answer. The next few days blurred together in a haze of humiliation. I searched for work, but every door I knocked on seemed to slam in my face. Years of caring for my mother had left my resume full of gaps. I was a man in his 40s with no savings, no connections, and no family willing to lift a finger. My brothers ran businesses. My sisters owned property. But when I called them for help, they laughed or ignored me. One of my brothers even said, "Why don't you get used to it, Frank? You've always been a loser. At least now you're living like one." The words burned. I wanted to scream, to hit something, to make him feel even a fraction of what I felt. But I hung up the phone in silence because anger wouldn't feed my children. Elena tried to stay hopeful. She picked up part-time cleaning jobs at diners and motels, scrubbing floors while I filled out endless applications. At night, we shared microwave noodles in the motel room, pretending it was dinner. My daughter cried herself to sleep. My son stopped talking as much. Every time I looked at them, the weight of my father's betrayal grew heavier. But then, something happened. One evening, while Elena was at work and the kids were doing their homework at the small motel desk, I went through the duffel bag we had carried from the mansion. Most of it was clothes, some old photos, a few trinkets my mother had kept in her nightstand. But at the bottom, hidden under a worn scarf, I found a small envelope with my name written on it. The handwriting was shaky, but I recognized it instantly. My mother's. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter, yellowed at the edges, folded carefully. The first line stopped my breath. "Frank, if you are reading this, it means your father has betrayed you the way I always feared he would." I sat frozen, the noise of the motel fading around me. My mother had known. She had seen this coming, and what she wrote next would change everything. Frank discovers a hidden letter from his late mother, revealing she knew of the father's betrayal and hinting at something more. The motel room was silent except for the hum of the old air conditioner. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter, the paper fragile in my grip. My mother's handwriting sprawled across the page, uneven and faded, but every word felt alive, as if she were whispering directly into my ear. "Frank," it began, "you were always the one who stayed, the one who cared, the one who gave me more love than I ever deserved. I know your father. I know his pride, his greed, and his obsession with appearances. He will reward those who shine in public, even if their hearts are empty, and he will punish those who sacrifice in silence. That is why I have to tell you something I've never told anyone else." I swallowed hard, my eyes racing over the words. "What your father calls wealth is built on lies. Years ago, when you were still a boy, he made choices that hurt people, choices I could not stop. I stayed quiet to protect you, but I never forgave myself. Before I died, I hid something that belongs to you, something that could change everything, if you were brave enough to find it." My heart pounded. I read the next line twice to make sure I hadn't imagined it. "Go to the old basement of the house. Behind the shelves where I kept my sewing boxes, you'll find a small wooden chest. It is yours. Do not trust anyone with it, not even your father." The letter ended with words that broke me. I loved you more than anyone. Frank, if the world ever turns its back on you, remember, I never did. Tears blurred my vision. I pressed the letter against my chest, my breath shaking. All those years of loneliness, all the nights of sitting beside her bed while she struggled to breathe, I had wondered if it mattered. Now I knew it did. To her it always had. But the letter also left me trembling with a new kind of fear. A chest hidden in the basement of the house? My father's house. The mansion that I had been thrown out of and banned from. If he had any idea it existed, he would have destroyed it already. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. My son, Oliver, looked up from the desk, curious. "Dad, what is it?" I forced a smile. Something from Grandma. Something important. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind spun with questions. What was in the chest? Money, documents, proof of my father's crimes? Whatever it was, my mother had risked everything to leave it for me. By dawn I had made up my mind. I told Elena about the letter as we sat in the motel lobby sipping cheap coffee. Her eyes widened. "Frank, if your father finds out—" "He won't," I said, though my own voice betrayed the doubt in my chest. "I'll go at night. I'll get in, grab the chest, and get out before anyone notices." Elena reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Be careful, please, we've lost too much already." That evening, after the kids were asleep, I drove back to the mansion. The gates loomed like prison bars, the lights blazing inside, laughter drifting through the windows. My brothers were throwing another party, flaunting the wealth that had once been part of my life. I parked down the street and slipped through the side path I had used 1,000 times as a boy. My heart hammered with every step. The garden was overgrown, but the basement door at the back of the house was still there, hidden behind the vines. I gripped the rusted handle and pulled. It creaked, louder than I wanted, but no one came. The air smelled of dust and damp wood as I crept inside. The basement hadn't changed. The old shelves still lined the walls, stacked with boxes of fabric and jars of buttons. My mother's sewing corner. My chest tightened as memories flooded back, sitting there as a child, watching her work, listening to her hum lullabies while the sewing machine buzzed. I moved the shelves carefully, my hands shaking. Behind them, just as the letter said, was a small wooden chest. Dust covered its surface, but the lock was intact. I lifted it slowly, the weight heavier than I expected, and carried it to the center of the room. My pulse thundered in my ears. I knelt, fingers trembling over the lock, ready to force it open. And then, footsteps. Frank finds the hidden chest in the basement, but before he can open it, someone else enters the room. The sound of footsteps froze every nerve in my body. They were heavy, slow, deliberate, each step echoing against the concrete walls of the basement like a hammer against my skull. I pressed my hand down on the lid of the chest, as if somehow my palm could erase it, hide it from the eyes of whoever was coming. My breath caught in my throat. The old wooden door creaked and a thin beam of light sliced through the darkness. It swayed left, then right, before locking directly on me. For a split second, my heart stopped. My mind screamed, "Father." But when the light tilted upward, I saw not him, but Clarissa, my youngest sister. Her gasp shattered the silence. "Frank? What the hell? What are you doing here?" I froze, searching her face. Her eyes were wide, not in anger, but in shock. Clarissa was always different. Unlike my brothers, who laughed at my misery, unlike my father, whose coldness was a weapon, she carried fragments of my mother's kindness. But I couldn't trust even her, not completely. I swallowed hard, my voice steady but low. "I'm here for something that belongs to me. Something Mom left for me." Her flashlight beam shifted from my face to the chest. Suspicion clouded her features. "That's Dad's. You shouldn't touch it," he said. I cut her off. "I don't care what Dad said. This isn't his. It's Mom's. She wanted me to find it. She wrote me a letter before she died. For a moment, her expression flickered. Curiosity, doubt, maybe even guilt. I saw the war inside her. On one side, loyalty to our father, the man who controlled her life. On the other, the faint embers of love for her brother, the one she used to sneak cookies to at night when I went to bed hungry. Her lips parted as if to speak, but then her phone buzzed. The vibration was sharp, intrusive, filling the tense silence between us. She glanced at the screen. Her face drained of color. "Dad's coming down." He heard something. Every muscle in my body tensed. She looked back at me, panic flickering in her eyes. Her voice cracked into a whisper. "Go, Frank, take it and go. If he finds you here, he'll kill you. You don't understand. He'll kill you." Her words sliced through me. I didn't wait for her to repeat herself. I bent low, hooked my arms under the chest, and lifted. It was heavier than I expected, digging into my ribs, but adrenaline fueled me. From the top of the stairs, I heard the unmistakable rasp of my father's voice. "Who's down there?" The words boomed like thunder, the kind that makes the ground tremble. Clarissa's flashlight jerked away. She stepped into the shadows, almost shielding me. "Go now." I ran. Through the back of the basement. Out the old servant's door that hadn't been used in years. The hinges shrieked, and for a moment I thought the sound would betray me. But the storm in my veins drowned everything else out. I sprinted across the lawn, chest crushing my arms. The mansion's lights glowing behind me like eyes watching. I didn't dare look back. By the time I reached the car, sweat clung to me like a second skin. I shoved the chest into the back seat, slammed the door, and fired the engine to life. The wheels spun on gravel before finding grip. I drove, headlights off, until the estate shrank into darkness behind me. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. Chest heaving, hands trembling on the wheel. The wheels spun on gravel before finding grip. I drove, headlights off, until the estate shrank into darkness behind me. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. Chest heaving, hands trembling on the wheel. When I pulled into the motel parking lot an hour later, my body was shaking so hard I almost dropped the key. Room 17's door opened before I even knocked. Elena stood there, her face pale, her hands trembling. She gasped when she saw the chest. She pulled me inside quickly, locking the door twice, sliding the chain into place. Our kids stirred awake on the sagging bed, blinking at me through half-closed eyes. I set the chest down on the stained carpet, dropped to my knees, and pulled a screwdriver from the bag. The lock resisted, screeching against the metal. My hand slipped once, cutting the skin near my thumb. Blood beaded, but I kept going. Finally, with a sharp crack, the lock snapped. The chest popped open with a groan, as though it resented giving up its secrets. The kid slid off the bed and crouched beside me. Elena knelt on my other side, eyes wide with fear and hope mixed together. Inside was a stack of envelopes, bound together by a faded ribbon. Beneath them, wrapped in yellowing cloth, was a thick ledger. The smell of old paper and dust rose like the ghosts of my mother's past. My hands shook as I lifted the first envelope. It wasn't a letter. It was a bank statement. My eyes darted over the numbers and my throat went dry. Millions, not thousands, millions. Offshore accounts, names I didn't recognize. Hidden fortunes that had been buried away like treasure in a pirate's chest. I grabbed the next envelope. Another bank statement. Different account. More millions. Layer after layer of wealth concealed. My stomach twisted. My father wasn't just cruel. He wasn't just greedy. He was hiding something much darker. I pulled out the ledger. Its cover was cracked leather, its pages thick and brittle. Line after line detailed transactions. Money funneled through fake businesses. Politicians' names scribbled beside dollar amounts. Coded payments that hinted at bribes and laundering. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "Frank, this is corruption. This is evidence." I felt the weight of it press down on me. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This wasn't about a will or property or favoritism. This was dangerous. My mother hadn't hidden this to keep it safe. She had hidden it because it could destroy him. At the bottom of the chest was a smaller envelope sealed with wax. My heart stopped when I saw the handwriting. It was hers. Shaky, fading, but unmistakable. My mother's handwriting. On the front, in looping letters, were the words, "For Frank, when the time is right." My fingers trembled as I held it. I could almost feel her presence in the room, her voice urging me forward. I looked at Elena. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I slid my thumb under the wax, ready to break the seal. And then it happened. A knock on the door. 3 sharp raps. Not the knock of a motel maid or a neighbor asking for change. It was measured, deliberate, almost rehearsed. The kids jumped, clinging to each other. Elena's face went white. Another knock followed, louder this time. I stuffed the envelope back into the chest, snapping the lid shut. My pulse roared in my ears as the third knock came. Slow, drawn out, echoing like a countdown. Frank uncovers proof of his father's secret fortune and corruption, and his mother's final letter. But before he can open it, someone knocks on the motel door with deliberate, menacing patience. The pounding at the motel door sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't frantic, not like someone desperate. It was deliberate, patient, a hunter's knock. Whoever was out there already knew what was inside. Elena clutched my arm. The kids huddled closer, their eyes wide with terror. For a moment, I considered silence. Maybe they would leave if we pretended we weren't here. But the voice that followed destroyed that hope. "Frank, open the door." It wasn't my father. The voice was younger, sharper, with an edge of arrogance that cut straight into me. It was Victor, my oldest brother. Elena's lips trembled. "How did he find us?" I didn't answer. I already knew. Clarissa. She must have warned him, or worse, him and father both. My heart ached at the thought, but I couldn't afford to dwell. Another knock, louder this time. "I know you have it. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I shoved the chest under the bed, pulling the thin motel comforter down to hide the bulge. My mind raced. If I opened the door, he'd take everything. If I didn't, he'd force his way in. The kids clung to Elena, and she whispered prayers under her breath. The knob rattled. Metal scraped as if someone had jammed a tool into the lock. They weren't going to wait for permission. I grabbed the motel chair and jammed it under the knob, just as the door shook violently. "Frank!" Victor's voice cracked like a whip. "You think you can steal from us? That belongs to Dad. You don't deserve a cent." The kids whimpered. Elena pressed her face into her hands. The door shuddered again. The frame groaned. One more hit and it would snap. I looked at my family, my heart splitting. We had seconds before he broke in, before he saw everything. Then my eyes fell on the bathroom window. Small, dirty, just big enough. "Go," I whispered to Elena. "Take the kids." "Out the back. Now." She stared at me, horror in her eyes. "What about you?" "I'll hold them. Just go." The door cracked under the force of a shoulder slam. Splinters rained onto the carpet. Elena grabbed the kids, ushering them into the bathroom. Their terrified faces seared into my memory as the window screeched open. I stayed by the chest, my heart hammering. The door exploded inward with a deafening crack. Wood splintered. The chair flew across the room. Victor stormed in, flanked by 2 of my other brothers, both broad-shouldered, eyes blazing with greed. Victor's gaze snapped to me. "Where is it?" I stood my ground, chest hidden beneath the bed. My voice was steady, though my knees trembled. "You're not taking it," he sneered. "You think you can stop us? You're pathetic. You always were, living off scraps while we built empires." One of the brothers lunged, grabbing me by the collar, slamming me against the wall. Pain shot through my back. Victor knelt, scanning under the bed. For a moment, panic surged in me. But then, blessed silence. He didn't see it. The chest was too deep, too covered. "Nothing," he snarled. "He's lying." They tossed the room apart, ripping sheets, overturning drawers, smashing the lamp. I fought to breathe, every slam of my body against the wall a reminder of my weakness. Then a sound, the screech of metal, the bathroom window. Victor's head snapped toward the noise. His eyes narrowed. "They're running." He bolted toward the bathroom. My chest tightened. Elena, the kids. I wrenched free from my brother's grip, adrenaline surging. I threw myself at Victor, slamming him against the wall before he could reach the door. We grappled, fists flying, grunts and curses filling the air. My lips split, blood running down my chin, but I didn't stop. Behind me, I heard the sound of footsteps on gravel outside. My family, safe. That gave me strength. I shoved Victor hard, sending him sprawling across the bed. He roared with fury, scrambling up, his hand reaching into his jacket. For a split second, I saw metal gleam. A gun. The world slowed. I dove behind the overturned chair as the gun roared. The shot blasted through the air, shattering the motel mirror, spraying glass across the room. My ears rang, my heart raced. Another shot. This one tore through the mattress, stuffing exploding like snow. I crawled low, chest screaming with pain, until I reached the bed. My hand shot under it, gripping the chest. Victor's eyes widened. "No!" I yanked it free, using every ounce of strength, and charged toward the bathroom. He fired again. The bullet splintered the door frame inches from my head. I didn't stop. Through the bathroom, out the window. The frame scraped my back, tore my shirt, but I burst into the night air. Elena and the kids were crouched behind the dumpster, eyes wide with fear. When they saw me clutching the chest, relief and terror mingled on their faces. I ran to them, pulling them close. Behind us, Victor's furious roar shook the night. "You can't run, Frank."
"You'll never outrun us."
The gun fired again, the bullet sparking off the metal dumpster. The kids screamed. Elena clung to me. We ran, into the dark, into the unknown, clutching the chest that held my mother's final secrets. But even as we fled, one thought gnawed at me. The sealed envelope, still unopened. Inside it could be salvation, or the end of us all. Frank and his family narrowly escape his armed brothers with the chest. But the danger is escalating, and the unopened envelope still waits. We didn't stop running until our lungs burned and our legs screamed for mercy. The night swallowed us, the motel shrinking into nothing behind us. Victor's furious shouts fading into the distance. We ducked into an alley, breathless, crouching in the shadows behind a row of trash bins. Elena clutched the kids to her, whispering soft prayers into their hair. I pressed my back to the wall, chest clutched tightly in my arms, heart pounding like a war drum. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sounds were our ragged breathing and the distant hum of traffic. Finally, Elena's voice broke the silence, trembling but firm. "Frank, we can't keep running like this. We need to know what's inside. That letter. Whatever your mother wanted you to see, it's the only way forward." She was right. I set the chest down on the cracked pavement, my fingers fumbling with the wax-sealed envelope. My mother's handwriting glowed faintly under the dim streetlight, fragile and fading, but powerful enough to make my chest tighten. I broke the seal with trembling hands. The letter inside was short, just a single page written in shaky ink. "My dearest Frank, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. I have watched you suffer and I am sorry. Your father is not who you believe him to be. He is dangerous and the wealth he built is poisoned. He will try to bury you as he buried the truth. But hidden within this chest is more than money. There is evidence, evidence that can destroy him, evidence that powerful men will kill to protect. Trust no one in this family, not Victor, not even Clarissa. Only you, Frank. You are the only one strong enough to do what must be done. This is bigger than inheritance. This is survival. My hands shook. I could barely breathe. Elena leaned in, eyes wide. Frank, what does it mean? I swallowed hard. It means Mom knew. She knew everything. About the money, the corruption, all of it, and she wanted me to end it. The kids huddled close, fear etched across their faces. I reached deeper into the chest and pulled out a second bundle. Hidden beneath the ledger, envelopes sealed in plastic. Inside were photographs, grainy, black and white, some decades old, others more recent. Men in suits, handshakes with politicians, stacks of cash changing hands. My stomach twisted. These weren't just random images. They were proof. Proof of everything my father had built his empire on. Lies, bribes, and blood. Then in the final envelope I found something worse. A contract, signed in my father's unmistakable handwriting. An agreement to silence a man. Payment, $500,000. The note scribbled in the margin made my blood run cold. Accident must look real. No loose ends. I froze. My chest tightened. My vision blurred. My father hadn't just been corrupt. He'd killed. And worse. I remembered the accident that had taken my uncle's life 15 years ago. Everyone said it was tragic, random, unavoidable. But staring at the paper, I realized the truth. My father had ordered it. Elena's hand found mine, her grip trembling. Frank, this could put him in prison for life. My mind raced. The inheritance, the property, the favoritism. It had never been about family. It was about control, silence, keeping me weak so I could never uncover the truth. I stuffed the papers back into the chest, my pulse racing. We can't stay here. They'll find us again. We need to disappear. But even as the words left my mouth, headlights swept across the alley. A black SUV rolled slowly past, its tinted windows reflecting the glow of the streetlights. I ducked lower, clutching Elena and the kids close. The SUV crawled by like a predator scenting prey, then paused at the corner. For a moment I thought we'd been seen, but then it moved on, disappearing into the night. Elena exhaled shakily. They're hunting us, Frank. Your father won't stop. I knew she was right. We slipped out of the alley, moving deeper into the city. Always watching, always listening. Every shadow felt alive, every sound a threat. We found refuge in a 24-hour diner, sliding into a booth in the corner. The kids pressed against Elena, exhausted while I spread the documents across the table, under the flickering fluorescent lights. The waitress gave us a curious glance but didn't ask questions. I studied every page, every photograph, every ledger entry. The more I read, the clearer it became. My father wasn't just a greedy old man clinging to power. He was part of something vast, something that stretched beyond our family. He was a node in a web of corruption that touched politicians, corporations, maybe even law enforcement. And now by finding this chest I was marked. Elena reached across the table, her voice low. Frank, we can't fight this alone. We need help. I shook my head. If we go to the police, Dad's people will shut it down. He has them in his pocket. If we trust anyone in the family, we're dead. The only chance we have. My voice trailed off as my eyes landed on one name scribbled in the margin of the ledger. A name I hadn't seen in decades. It belonged to a man I hadn't spoken to since I was a teenager. A man my father despised. Uncle Raymond. He'd vanished years ago after a falling out with my father. Rumors swirled. Some said he'd fled the country. Others whispered he'd been killed. But here was his name, tied to a payment my father had made. A payment marked failed. He escaped. My pulse quickened. If Uncle Raymond was alive, he might be the only person who knew the full story. But before I could explain it to Elena, the door of the diner opened. Victor. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room, flanked by two more of my brothers. Elena's hand gripped mine under the table. The kids shrank against the booth, terror in their eyes. Victor's gaze locked on me. His lips curled into a smile that wasn't a smile at all. Found you. Frank uncovers that his father is tied to murder and vast corruption. Finds a clue about his missing Uncle Raymond. But before he can act, Victor and the brothers track him down at the diner. Victor's shadow filled the doorway of the diner, his broad frame blocking out the neon lights from the street. Two of my brothers flanked him, their eyes sharp, their movements precise. They weren't just here to scare me this time. They were here to end it. The waitress froze mid-step, sensing the tension. A hush fell across the diner, forks clinking against plates in nervous silence. Victor's voice carried like a knife through butter. Frank, you've caused enough trouble. Hand it over, and maybe I'll let your little family walk out of here. Elena's hand gripped mine under the table, trembling. The kids huddled close, their eyes darting between me and the men at the door. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might shatter my ribs. But as I stared at Victor, something inside me shifted. For years, I'd lived under my father's shadow. The poor son, the weak brother, the outcast. But now I held the truth, my mother's truth, and I realized, and for the first time, they feared me. I stood slowly, keeping my body between the chest and my family. My voice was steady, low, and colder than I thought possible. You want it? Come take it. Victor's smile twisted. He motioned to his men. They advanced, boots striking the diner floor like war drums. But before they reached me, a voice barked from the corner booth. Sit down, boys. Every head turned. An older man rose from the shadows, his gray hair slicked back, his eyes sharp with a predator's calm. My breath caught. Uncle Raymond, alive. Victor froze, his face draining of color. You... Raymond stepped forward, his cane tapping against the floor. Didn't expect to see me again, did you? Your father paid good money to have me buried. But your mother, she made sure I lived. The room was electric. My knees almost buckled. My mother had saved him. She had been protecting him the same way she tried to protect me. Raymond's eyes locked on me. Frank, you finally found it, didn't you? The chest. I nodded, breathless. Victor snarled, pulling the gun from his jacket. This is none of your business, old man. Step aside. Raymond chuckled, low and dangerous. Still your father's puppet, I see. He turned his gaze back to me. You want to end this, Frank? You expose it all, every page in that chest. But you better be ready, because once you do, there's no going back. The air crackled with tension. Victor raised the gun, his hand steady. I pushed Elena and the kids down behind the booth. My pulse roared in my ears. But before Victor could fire, Raymond moved faster than I thought possible. He swung his cane, not wood but steel. The gun clattered to the floor. Chaos erupted. The diner exploded into shouts and screams. Plates crashed. Chairs toppled. My brothers lunged at Raymond, fists flying, but the old man fought like a soldier. I dove for the gun, sliding across the linoleum. My hand closed around the cold metal just as one of my brothers tackled me to the ground. We wrestled, fists pounding, the weight of him crushing me. I fired. The bullet tore into the ceiling, dust raining down. The noise was deafening. Elena screamed. The kids cried. My vision blurred, but I forced myself up, slamming the butt of the gun into my brother's jaw. He collapsed with a grunt. Victor charged at me, eyes blazing with rage. He swung, his fist connecting with my cheek. Pain exploded across my face, but I didn't fall. Not this time. I swung back. Years of suppressed anger, humiliation, and pain fueled my fist. It connected with his nose, and he staggered back, blood spraying. Raymond grabbed the chest, shouting over the chaos. "Frank, decide now. Run and hide or burn it all down." My chest heaved. The gun trembled in my hand. Elena's terrified eyes locked with mine. The kids clung to her, sobbing. I thought of my mother, her handwriting on that letter. Her plea, "You are the only one strong enough." I knew then what I had to do. I grabbed the ledger, the contracts, the photographs, every page of corruption, and I marched to the front of the diner, slamming them onto the counter. The waitress gasped. The customers whispered. Someone pulled out a phone, snapping photos. Another began recording video. Victor's face twisted with horror. "No, stop!" I shouted, my voice shaking the walls. This is who my father really is. A murderer, a thief, a man who built an empire on blood and lies. Dozens of eyes turned to their phones, cameras flashing. The evidence immortalized in seconds. Victor roared, lunging at me. But before he could reach me, Raymond leveled his steel cane, striking him across the temple. Victor collapsed unconscious. Silence fell, heavy, final. The police arrived minutes later, drawn by the gunshots and the chaos. But this time it wasn't my father's word against mine. The evidence was everywhere. Photos, contracts, names. The videos from strangers spread online faster than fire in dry grass. My father's empire crumbled overnight. Investigations launched. Politicians scrambled. My brothers were arrested, their greed and violence catching up with them at last. And me? For the first time in my life, I wasn't the poor son, the weak brother, the outcast. I was the one who ended it. Weeks later, I stood at my mother's grave, Elena's hand in mine, the kids by my side. Raymond stood with us, silent, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I placed the letter back on the grave, pressing my palm against the cold stone. "I did it, Mom. I kept your secret. And I used it to finish what you started." The wind rustled the trees, carrying her voice in the silence. I finally felt free. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Because somewhere, hidden in the ashes of my father's empire, were names and enemies who weren't done with me yet. And they'd be coming. Frank destroys his father's empire with his mother's evidence. But in doing so, awakens enemies far beyond his family. His fight for survival has only just begun.